Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session this morning. Just while we're waiting for people to join, we're going to kick off with a quick poll, just to get a view of what our opinion is around our cybersecurity awareness and training within our organizations. So we'll let that poll up for a couple of minutes, and then we'll kick off. So on a scale of 1 to 3, how would you rate your organization's current cybersecurity awareness and training? Be interesting to see now when we have the group, which bucket do the majority of people fall into? Still see quite a few people joining. So for anyone that's just joined, before we kick off this morning, we're just doing a quick poll to see how you would rate your organization's current cybersecurity awareness and training. Okay, so far we have 44% that are rating this as adequate, 11% inadequate so far. And of course, we always have some organizations that are unsure, but hopefully by the end of this session today, you'll move into either adequate or inadequate. Okay, so we will kick off. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. My name is Karen McCaffrey, and I'm the Customer Success Director for CWSI. And today we're here to talk about the latest digital defense report released by Microsoft. In order to introduce you to our panel today, we have Des Ryan, who's our Chief Operations Officer with CWSI, and also ex-Director of Cybersecurity for Microsoft. We're also joined by Ben Durham, who's a Cybersecurity Specialist with CWSI, and Leigh-Anne English, who's the Channel Manager for Modern Work and Security in Microsoft. You're all very welcome. First up, we'll come to you, Des. Des is going to take everybody through a high level of the Digital Defence Report for anybody that mightn't have had a chance to read it in great detail. So over to you, Des.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and we can kick off. So yeah, what I wanted to do is just take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to position the report, pull out some high-level detail that I think is interesting, and try and give you some actionable insights up front with regard to some of the key findings in the report. So bear with me as I advance my slides. We've done the introduction, so I can skip past that. So for those of you who don't know CWSI, I just quickly wanted to give you a perspective as to who we are. So we're a Dublin headquartered European cybersecurity company. Very, very strong Microsoft partner. We've been lucky enough to win the Microsoft Security Partner of the Year 2 out of the last 3 years. We're a member of the MISA organization, and we've got a team of about 160 people spread across 6 countries, currently holding over 300 active Microsoft certifications. So lots of skill with regard to Microsoft and Microsoft security. The screen on the left-hand side of the screen there's a quick glimpse at some of our customers. So in Garda Síochána, NATO, the Dutch police force, and the Belgian military. So just to kind of give you an idea of the caliber of customers that we work with. We work with all kinds of different organizations, and obviously we're delighted to have these kinds of conversations to help people form an opinion about cybersecurity, and obviously to implement defenses and protect their environments. So the Digital Defense Report. So this is the fourth report that Microsoft have released, and this one is 131 pages long. This time last year, when last year's report came out, I was the one leading out for Microsoft on the report, and I've always found this report to be, if not the best, certainly one of the best cybersecurity reads in the market. So if you haven't come across it before, please take the time to read it. It really is fascinating, and there's lots of good insights in the report. So why is Microsoft's view on cybersecurity important or particularly relevant? If you think about Microsoft as an organization, they've got a huge footprint on the internet. When you think about whether it's the Hotmail accounts, the Outlook accounts, the enterprise solutions like Azure, like Dynamics, you know, the numbers of machines that they patch. Then there's the personal devices like the Xbox network. They've got an incredible perspective as to what's going on in the internet. They take in 65 trillion signals a year. Sorry, a day. What am I saying? A year? A day from that footprint. And there's no other organization that's got that kind of visibility as to what's going on. So they've got a unique perspective, which is why this report is particularly relevant. Interestingly enough, when this first came out 4 years ago, that 65 trillion signals was 24 trillion. So you can see that the amount of information that Microsoft are pulling in is dramatically increasing. And as I said, it makes this report particularly interesting. Now, as well as that footprint, Microsoft have also got significant investments in Digital Crimes Unit, in the DART team, so they have also got other ways to gather information as to what's going on in the world of cybersecurity. So I've picked out 4 areas that I wanted to quickly touch on, just to kind of set the scene a little bit. The first one is geopolitics and nation-state actors. To me, this is really interesting. This is the James Bond aspect of our industry, and a lot of people would say, well, it doesn't really affect day-to-day business. I'm going to give you some examples now why it does. But if you're interested in politics at all and what's going on in the world, this is a very interesting angle on the subject. What's on the screen now isn't from the Microsoft report because it's from the last week, and you know, obviously there are some terrible things going on in the world, whether it's in the Ukraine or whether it's in Israel. And these flashpoints obviously are headline news, but there's another layer in terms of what's going on from a cyber perspective. So I don't need to go through all of the examples that are on the screen here, but I'll just give you a couple. So the ICC, the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands, was taken offline. You can see that in Israel, there's been attacks on some of the news media. Anonymous released a Guy Fawkes video this week warning Israel that if it didn't back down, that it was going to take action against Israel and its partners. Attack on the stock exchange. You know, this stuff is all happening in real time, and one of the things I love about this industry is that pretty much every morning I look at, you know, cyber attack and I find out what new things have happened, and it is astounding. A lot of it is just bad guys doing bad stuff, but a lot of it can be attributed back to either nation states or organizations affiliated with nation states. Down the left-hand side of the screen there, in terms of why it might impact business, those 1 to 14, those are crime groups. So those are cyber criminals or groups of cyber criminals who have declared that they are fighting on behalf of the Palestinian people, and the countries below that are countries that they have decided have come out in favor of Israel, and that they are going to attack in any way, shape, or form that they can. So these things are interesting to watch, but you've also got to look at how they also impact your business. So if you haven't had a chance to read the report, there's a big section about the taxonomy of cyber attacks for nation state actors. Microsoft traditionally have been slow to attribute an attack to a particular country, but they are starting to do that now, and they're starting to categorize and put a naming convention behind the various attack groups. You can see on the screen here there's a section called Storm that doesn't have a country associated with it. These are emerging threat actors. So they will ultimately either be not aligned to a nation state, or if they are seen to be aligned to a nation state, they will get renamed to be something like X-Blizzard or X-Typhoon. I think the key thing here is Microsoft are tracking over 300 threat actor groups. Many of those are nation state affiliated or are nation states themselves. And it's interesting to watch what happens in the broader cybersecurity space as various political things happen. So, for example, when Russia initially invaded Ukraine, all of the Russian affiliated, or the Blizzards, as you can see on the screen here, the Blizzard organizations stopped operating in ransomware temporarily, and they started to support the Russian attack on the West. That lasted for the first 3 or 4 months of the war, and now a lot of those mercenary groups are gone back to things like ransomware. So you can see peaks and troughs in terms of broader cybersecurity attacks when a major political thing happens in the world. In terms of actionable insights, again, there's some things on the screen here you can read through at your leisure. But in terms of actionable insights, I think it's important for all of us in the cybersecurity world to keep abreast of what's going on, keep abreast of the kinds of threats that are being made, and then to see how they might impact our own organizations. So, for example, if your organization is using Wix as an example to do their websites, Wix is an Israeli organization, and there's no doubt that they will be under attack by somebody from the previous slides. And so if you're using a technology that is based out of a country that's under attack, make sure you're thinking about, is that the right technology, first of all? If it is the right technology, then make sure you're putting the right levels of defense around it. The other thing I would coach people to do is to keep track of the social media coverage that comes from their organizations. I would be slow at this point in time to come out on social media and make any form of a statement in terms of what's happening politically, just because it brings unnecessary risk to the organizations. Now, outside of the geopolitical stuff, which is intriguing and interesting to watch, the most important part of this report actually is stuff that impacts everyday business. And identity is absolutely key in my mind in terms of cyber defenses. And the report has got a whole bunch of different statistics with regard to identity. So, if I just talk through some of these, human ransomware, human operated ransomware up 200% year on year. So, you know, there is a huge amount of attacks going on, and it's rising. And all of these ransomware attacks start with somebody clicking on the wrong link. It starts with somebody's identity being compromised. And you can see there, in the time it takes me to read this sentence, Microsoft will have defended against 7,320 individual password attacks. And in the time it takes me to finish this sentence, a bot will have attempted to spoof a multi-factor authentication request. So you can see that there is a huge focus from the attackers on identity. When we go and engage with a customer and review the identity footprint of an organization, pretty much everybody has got some flaws in identity. And so it really is incumbent on us to make sure that we, you know, properly manage our identity, and that we're using things like MFA. So MFA is a key defense mechanism. You know, in 2021, Microsoft, the same report came out and said that only 20% of users were using MFA. I'm sure it'll have gone up since then, but I'm also sure it's probably not gone above 50%. And so my advice to everybody is that they're looking at their footprint, that they are implementing MFA. And even if you are using MFA for users, make sure you're also using it for things like your administration accounts. You'd be surprised how many people aren't using MFA effectively in that area. Now, with MFA in place, that still doesn't guarantee that you're going to be protected. There's a really interesting chapter in the report about MFA fatigue and how attackers are trying to circumvent the fact that MFA is being implemented. So again, I guess the actionable insights here is, you know, you need to get on top of your identity. Make sure that you're managing it well. Make sure that your processes around joiners and leavers is airtight. Make sure that you're using MFA, not only for your users, but also for your administration accounts. And also, I think the key thing in cybersecurity generally is education. We got to keep talking about this. We got to keep talking to our the end users in our organizations about cyber threats. And make them aware of things like MFA fatigue. You know, people can get discombobulated in terms of something pops up on my phone, I'm supposed to be authenticating myself, but I wasn't doing anything. Well, it must be right, and they go and they type in whatever the response to the MFA challenge is. So we got to keep on top of this stuff. Another area within the report that I found particularly fascinating is the phishing simulations that Microsoft ran. So 6.7 million simulations. So this is real life people. And if you can see the screen there, 7% of people clicked on the link or opened the wrong attachment. You know, we do talk about this a lot. Careful what you click on. 7% of people are still doing it. I can tell you, and honestly, anybody can do it. While I was working at Microsoft, I was the director of cybersecurity, and I clicked on the wrong link in an internal red team, blue team operation. So it's very easy to do. We're all human. Well, yeah, 7% to me tells me that there is still a major issue out there. If you think about that, 7% of 6.7 million is 469,000 people have clicked on the wrong link. Also on the screen there, you can see that there's an adversary in the middle. Attack is on the rise, and this is where people are outsourcing the harvesting of credentials. You know, for $1,000 a month, there are organizations such as Caffeine, Evil Proxy, and Naked Pages out there that will conduct the phishing attacks for me. So I don't even have to do the phishing attack anymore. All I need to do is to give them a relatively small fee in terms of the potential return, and they will give me a list of compromised credentials. So got to keep on top of this stuff and keep educating people. That's the key on this slide. Within the report, there's a section then about keeping things up to date. And again, I filled out a couple of interesting statistics. I think there's a fairly good focus on patching devices, whether they're kind of laptops or PCs. And I think in general terms, there's a good focus on patching servers. But that's only a fraction of the devices that are in any organization, whether it's an IoT device, whether it's the firmware on your laptops. There's a question for yourself. When was the last time anybody updated the firmware on a laptop in your organization? A huge gap there that we all need to get better at. Interesting that 80 to 90% of all successful attacks started in an unmanaged device, so a BYO device or a device that wasn't properly managed. So it tells me that there's a huge gap here that we need to start to work on. 70% of the organizations who were hit by human-operated ransomware had fewer than 500 employees. This tells me that just because we're in a smaller organization doesn't mean that we are less likely to be attacked. If anything, it means we're more likely to be attacked. And that presumably is because smaller organizations don't have dedicated security personnel. They potentially have less investment in terms of the cyber defenses. So there are reasons behind some of these things. In terms of getting a feel for the amount of unpatched devices, if you haven't heard of Shodan, go to Shodan. It's a really interesting website. It is basically Google for devices out on the internet that are not up to date in terms of their patching. It's a fascinating thing. It's an eye-opening thing. But I think keeping up to date is really a key thing. So if you're not managing devices and you've got a BYOD policy, let's make sure that you've got a policy for how you're protecting your data from a potentially unmanaged device. Really key. And the last section I wanted to quickly touch on is protecting your data. This to me is an area where we're doing a huge amount of work. And I think it's particularly topical because of AI. The right-hand side of the screen, you just put it there to, regardless of what industry vertical you're working in, you can see that it's a fairly even spread there. There isn't any one industry vertical that is being attacked more than another. So don't think that because you're in a legal firm or an accountancy firm or whatever it might be that you're less or more likely to be attacked. We are all open to being attacked. You can see that the numbers of attacks are up in terms of ransomware. One of the best ways to slow down a ransomware attack is to get on control of your data and to properly govern and control access of your data. From the report, 13% of human-operated ransomware attacks included some form of data exfiltration. So they ransom you, and then they can come back a second time and ransom you again in terms of if you don't pay us a second time, we're going to go and release this data to the world. So this is an area where most organizations do not have strong enough controls. Most organizations, to be very honest with you, don't even know what data that they've got. A lot of times we get asked, well, what's the plan with regard to AI and that? From my vantage point, AI is built on top of whatever data that you've got. So if you're going to build AI to support or to benefit your business, one of the biggest inputs into that is your insights and your data. So if you don't have control of your data, if you don't know what data you've got, then you're not going to be able to exploit AI the way it can be exploited. So that's data. And in terms of that, there are lots of things you can be doing in terms of discovery. The Purview suite is fantastic for this. Getting control of what the crown jewels of your organization are in terms of what your business will pay a ransom for. So that is the quick run through, the exec summary. I'm going to come back to the panel now and hand it back to Karen.
Thank you, Jez. Lots of food for thought there. Anybody that has any questions as we're going through this, please drop them in the window and we'll address them, and we'll try and have a session as collaborative as possible. Where to start? So I guess, Ben, can you tell me, were there any surprises for you that you saw in the report this year?
Karen, I suppose what Des just touched on there around data exfiltration, look, that's something that since November of last year, Microsoft have noticed it's actually doubled in the amount of instances. So, the theft of data from devices that are unmanaged, that can access company resources, they don't have conditional access policies, encryption, or anything like that. It's open season for bad actors when they actually do get access to your devices. So I think that's a really important one to think about for organizations, particularly in Ireland. And then the other one that was in one of the slides was there's a 13% human operated ransomware attacks. They actually involve some form of data exfiltration. So we'll always say never pay the ransom. But if they have taken data from you, it's very likely they're going to come back again with a second ransom offer. So it is something to look at. And then I think the other one is, it's not necessarily surprising, but it's just when you see the numbers behind it, is business email compromises. So they skyrocketed. It's 156,000 attacks roughly a day. So when you look at that's an increase of about 3 billion, I think it's 30 billion attacks per month. So that's 4,000 attacks per second. So this is really important for organizations that are in the cloud, especially ones that are mature and really utilize the cloud. This is 4,000 blocked attacks of Microsoft identities. I think that brings us to a bit of an area where we need to have a bit of synergy between our IT practices and our practical procedures, because to mitigate these attacks, I think there needs to be a bit more of a shift where businesses can actually foster a culture of cybersecurity awareness. Because look, these attacks are attacking employees, not just the IT team, it's everyone. So there does need to be a bit of accountability and awareness amongst employees.
That's really interesting, Ben. And in terms of fostering that culture that you're talking about, do you have any ideas on how an organization would go about doing that?
Yeah, I think, look, sessions like these are really good, but it's always people from the IT side. So I think as a company-wide initiatives, training and education is a really important, clear policies. There's also mentioned phishing simulation. So I think they're excellent because they actually help you evaluate your organization's readiness for a cyber attack as well. As mentioned, regular updates, access controls, and then monitoring. So, we mentioned a lot of kind of human activities. And when we mention AI, I always find it a bit of a buzzword that we need to pair AI with actual human processes. AI is a tool. It's not the thing that will solve the problem. So using that to monitor anomalies, but you do definitely need that human intervention there as well. And on human intervention, I think there's a human element as well with discussing cybersecurity, because while you want to be secure, you also want people to be able to do their job effectively and efficiently. So the right tools, right procedures and strategies need to be in place. I think then as well, look, people on the call probably are used to this. There's a huge issue around budgeting. So if you are training employees, if you are showing the importance in that attacks don't just impact IT, they impact the entire organization, they impact employees, customers, everyone that we work with. I think that really helps with getting employees interested, but also getting board buy-in when it comes to security initiatives.
That's interesting, Ben. Leigh-Anne, coming from the Microsoft view, so we can all appreciate the importance of cybersecurity, and we see everything that's happening in the market. But I imagine sometimes it's hard to really demonstrate an ROI on it. Is that something that you would have a lot of experience on working with clients?
Yeah, so totally agree. Trying to translate the ROI is a really challenging task. One of those most powerful ways to do that is really understanding and presenting the average cost of a cyber breach. So the average cost globally this year was $4.45 million US, and that's a 15% increase over the past 3 years. That cost includes a few different things, so incident response, regulatory fines, reputation damage, and loss of business. So that's the first thing, is really understanding that. The second is around differentiating between the cost of proactive cybersecurity measures, but then the expenses that are also incurred after a breach. So proactive measures like investing in a robust security system. So if we think about the defence report, it states as well that MFA reduces the risk of compromise by over 90%. And if we think about that from a preemptive cost perspective, that works out at just over 1 month. So there's a comparison there between proactive costs and after the breach. And just kind of while we're talking about licensing, I think it's really important for customers to educate themselves on the current functionality that they have within their licensing. So this isn't always a conversation about buying more and getting new licensing, but instead utilising and maximising current investment, and that can include displacing vendor technologies and consolidating to one vendor. So I think a specialist security partner like CWSI can act as a customer's trusted advisor here to really make sure that they're getting the most out of their licensing, and also to decrease their time to value.
Yeah, that's really that's good news for everybody to hear, Leigh-Anne, that you know there's quick wins to be got here from leveraging the licensing that you've already invested in, for sure. So when you think about where we are then, so we're talking about fostering a culture, we're talking about demonstrating an ROI to a board. Des, is there anything missing there that you think to help build the business case?
Yeah, before I answer, I'm just going to add to what Leigh-Anne said, because I think there's a couple of really good points there. The first one, you talked about the cost of a breach, and you put a financial value on it, and absolutely stand by those numbers, fully supported that they're an accurate reflection of reality. I've been involved in a number of attacks, not that I perpetrated them, but I've been involved in the recovery and the response to a number of attacks. And I think the piece of the puzzle that gets missed a lot is the human impact. The impact on people when an organization has been hit is really significant. You know, if you've been attacked, you're looking at something between 6 weeks and 6 months worth of a recovery. And those first 6 weeks are a scramble, because the pressure on the business to stay open and to stay operating is huge. You know, it comes to the IT team and to the CISO or whoever leads security. They come under a huge amount of pressure, and that gets forgotten about a little bit. So I guess I just wanted to throw that back into the mix. In terms of what else is missing in terms of getting the ROI signed off, it's really difficult in cybersecurity, because you know it's an intangible. You know, it's you know, if I spend this money, how do I know I'm going to get a return when you don't know whether or not you're going to get attacked, or if you've been attacked? It is a bit of an intangible. However, I think that there are reports like this one can give you great insights into where to make your investments. So everybody is struggling with budget. Everyone's trying to figure out, well, where can I save a few dollars? Investing in some of the key areas, like MFA, like identity, like your data discovery, you know, these things, they can mitigate 99% of attacks. And so spending your dollars wisely is a key starting point. And that starts with understanding your current position. Where have I got a weakness in my posture? Where can I, if I've got $1 to spend, where am I going to spend it? And then you can go to your board and you can use some of the statistics that are in this report to show, look, this is where the global challenge is, and this is where I want to spend these dollars, because this is where we're weak. It makes it a little bit easier to get it over the line. I think the other point that Leigh-Anne made that I think is really key is in terms of the numbers of security vendors that most people have got in their environment. If you roll back 5-6 years, the whole mantra in cybersecurity was defense in depth. You had to have different vendors doing different aspects of your cybersecurity. The thought process being that if I had checkpoint on my firewall and they got compromised, well, that's okay, because the next level of defense is a different vendor and it'll take them time to get to the right part of my organization. That's all gone out the window with zero trust. You know, in terms of identities being attacked, defense in depth becomes less about the different vendors and more about different technologies at different levels. And Microsoft have really emerged over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of the leading vendor. The capabilities that they've got is really, really broad. And so there's an opportunity to consolidate security vendors by using your licensing more effectively. And so, you know, going to your board and saying, I need to spend X amount of dollars here, but I'm saving more dollars here because we're consolidating on vendors. That's a great message, and one that we're seeing a lot of in the market at the moment.
That is a great message. And I think too, with NIST coming around the corner next October, that would probably help get board buy-in too, because obviously it's something that nobody can steer away from. Just to come to you, Ben, on that, key quick wins and key quick concerns with NIST coming. What do you see them as?
Well, this is an interesting one because I suppose it's not something that technically impacts every organization. However, if your organization is impacted by it, it means that you have a huge amount of work to do. But if it's not, it does actually create this resource where you can very clearly and very effectively actually benchmark yourself against the NIST standards. And look, a lot of it's similar to what Des said. So, you know, of course, MFA, identity and access management, zero trust, cloud security is a big one, data security, you know, like the kind of the core pillars of it. I think companies will be surprised as well at how quickly you could turn around risk assessments, gap analysis, you know, health checks, anything like that. You can turn around in a few days and they'll give you a huge list of recommendations and quick remediation guidelines to protect yourself, you know, and that also then not just protect yourself, but setting you up, I suppose, for success and setting you up to be not just doing well, but being one of the kind of market leaders when it comes to being and operating a secure environment. So I think with NIST 2, one of the things is that it is quite broad, it is quite complex, and from my review of it, some of it maybe isn't very clear if you're just reading the guidelines. So seeking proper guidance and advice from qualified suppliers would be, I think, a really, really important step to getting yourself NIST ready.
I think it's fair to say with NIST too, the findings from this report can only help you with your readiness for NIST. Leigh-Anne, is there anything there that you'd add?
Yeah, so just like in general, compliance regulations like these have a profound impact on an organization's security strategy, and NIST 2 is like the biggest regulatory compelling event that we've seen since GDPR, and it's covering 18 different sectors. I would say that a lot of the requirements can be addressed with Microsoft technology, especially if you look at the M365 E5 licensing and the capabilities you get in that. But some of these requirements are process based, and it's exactly as a customer where I would lean in on a solid security partner, the likes of CWSI, to help you on that path to becoming NIST compliant. And just to round it off, so Bennett said as well, this may not affect all sectors. I think that it's still a great framework to follow, regardless if you fall into one of these 18 sectors or not, to really help you develop a robust security strategy. And again, that's exactly where you should lean on kind of a security partner to help you transition through this journey.
Leigh-Anne, this is the 4th year that Microsoft have issued a defense report. Would you have any insights as to why they're so happy to continue doing this?
Yeah, so Microsoft have came like out of the woodworks as a really strong security player, and we've got a really strong security standing now. The Microsoft mission is really to educate and empower stakeholders in evolving their digital landscape. The goal is to facilitate collaboration and innovation among public and private sectors, policy organisations and standard bodies to really enhance a collective defence. And one of the key advantages that we have at Microsoft is our security graph. So it really gives us a better picture than anybody else of the threat landscape and the attack vectors. So, Des mentioned earlier, it collects and analyzes over 8 trillion signals per day from diverse sources, and it really enables faster, more effective threat detection.
It's interesting. I'm smiling at you, Leigh-Anne, because I know that you're in the Belfast office in Microsoft this morning. This beautiful sun coming in behind you. It's almost like a false background. It's so picturesque. Moving on then, really, there's lots to talk about kind of emerging technologies and AI now, and everybody is excited about the art of the possible with it. Ben, just to come to you there and ask you to do some Meg stuff for us. Any emerging technologies that you think will be particularly interesting trends from this year?
Yeah, and look, I think people are probably sick of hearing it, but obviously AI is a huge one, and one of the big challenges around that is that for all of us in the working world, you know, we have to follow fairly strict rules and regulations, whereas any threat actors, if they can use AI, they can use whatever they want, however they want. So that does cause a fairly significant problem. So look, again, human processes, but also bringing in the right tech stacks to combat AI that they're going to be using. However, I know that Leigh-Anne coming from Microsoft and Des as well, they probably have an even better insight into kind of emerging AI trends than I do. So a couple of the other things I've seen, not just from the report, but from conversations that we're having with businesses every day, a huge one is cloud security and cloud security misconfiguration. And this is interesting because a few years ago, a lot of people were just transitioning to the cloud. They were getting better at it. They were putting different workloads into the cloud. But now a lot of companies across Ireland are very mature in the cloud. And once you're set up and once you're really dependent on it, that's great. And if it's working well, that's brilliant as well. The only problem is that it's the kind of technology that changes, almost on a daily basis. When it comes to settings, any of the updates that come in, are you actually regularly reviewing this to see what's changed, how it impacts you, how it impacts your security standing? Doing regular reviews on those, because it is now one of the newest and most targeted attack vectors as well. So that's something I think from this report and just from the last few years I've seen huge growth in. And then the last one, which is relevant for even this week, is third-party vendors. So a lot of people are probably familiar with the MoveIt breach that happened a few months ago, and that hit a lot of companies. I mean, Aer Lingus and BA were impacted by that, and loads of others. And then just this week, there was all of the drivers' data that was leaked, and that all both stemmed from one MoveIt. Another was a supplier in Ireland who the bad actors were able to find a vulnerability in their system and use that as a backdoor to get in. That exploitation took it all. Unsure of the damage that's happened at the moment, but it's something that's happened. And that can be a really tough one for businesses because you only have so much say over your suppliers. So it's when you are picking a supplier, be conscious of what you think their own systems are like as well compared to yours, and what data you're actually sharing with them. Because look, the issue is that all of these attacks are extremely costly. One of the issues is that when there are breaches like this, you have to take very reactive measures instead of being proactive, which is again, we talk about ROI and unplanned costs can be hugely damaging, and it can also damage business reputation too. So look, bringing in forensics teams, removing ransomware, getting your data back. From GDPR, you have to set up call centers, you know, to let customers know that their data has been leaked. So the restoration and recovery of attacks is complex, and it's awful, really.
It's interesting. So really, this report, together with NIST coming around the corner, they're our friends, really, because they're going to help us to, you know, we all want to be able to embrace AI and not to steer away or be afraid of it. So yeah, that's a good point, Ben. Leigh-Anne, would you add anything? Do you see any other emerging trends this year that you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. So I think AI is on the tip of everyone's tongue at the minute. So I'll talk a little bit about that first. So I think AI is like posed to address a really critical issue that we have right now in the NGO sector, and that's all around the scarcity of cybersecurity expertise. So there's, at the moment, the report tells us that there's less than 50% of organizations actually have those expertise. So AI-driven cybersecurity solutions, they can swiftly detect threats, analyze data, and automate responses, and that really reduces the need for extensive security staff. So it's really, AI offers an opportunity for organizations to safeguard their operations more efficiently and cost effectively, despite the limited expertise that they may already have. Another thing that we've seen in the report is there's been a massive surge in 2023, and that's really shaping the future of cybersecurity as well. So passwordless authentication and biometrics, NFA, definitely on the rise, but there's more work to be done. And those things are making it like more challenging for attackers to compromise users' credentials. The shift is also good in terms of user experience, so it reduces the burden of remembering like so many different passwords, and it's coherently shrinking the attack service for cyber criminals. I think they're probably the two main things I would say.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Des, any words of wisdom on this topic?
Yeah, look, AI is on everyone's mind. I think it's interesting that most people are struggling to figure out what it actually means. Now, it's clear from a company like Microsoft, they've got massive investment in AI, and they're building that capability into their products. So from Microsoft's perspective and from a cybersecurity perspective, AI-enabled defenses, I think is what Leigh-Anne referred to them as a minute ago, is really, really key. And that's definitely one important part of AI, is that it's infused into your defenses by using the products from the likes of Microsoft. Lots of people are also asking the question, well, how do we as an organization build AI to differentiate ourselves? So how does a manufacturer use AI to enable their products, as opposed to just procuring a product that is AI enabled? And to me, that boils down to data. You know, your data that you feed into your large language models and your machine learning is absolutely the foundation on which you are able to differentiate using AI. And as per the previous slides there, most organizations have got no idea what data they've got. And so if your organization is talking about AI and wanting to understand what their AI story is, starts with the data. And again, the likes of Purview from the Microsoft suite, and we've got a team that focus on this area, understanding your data, figuring out what's key, what can be used in terms of feeding into these machine learning models, and protecting it. So that's the AI story in my mind. There's two angles. One is it in the products that you're buying? And two, is it in the product that you're selling? Microsoft's technology have got the foot in both camps.
Okay, so we have a question from one of our attendees. Other than reports, what metrics would you recommend to show that demonstrate the defense tools are being effective at stopping attacks or incidents?
Well, I guess I'll give that one a crack. So what metrics would we use outside of these reports to show that defenses are being effective? Well, it all depends on the environment that you're working in. If you have got an MXDR service, typically speaking, they will have the ability to show you. The likes of Sentinel, the SIEM product from Microsoft, or our own MXDR service certainly has the ability to show when we've defended against an attack. So that's real-time information coming from your own organization. So that's one avenue. And the other avenue that I use is, again, just keeping a track of what's going on in real time. So, you know, my Twitter feed is all cybersecurity. And so I'm seeing things that are happening from lots of different angles and industries and countries. And I use that information when I'm talking to customers as well. So those are the two things that jump into my mind. I'm not sure if that answers the question particularly well, but that's the answer as I see it.
So it's really kind of a case of, if you have everything implemented and you have made the investment, no news is good news, really. If everything ticks over, it's working. And look,
yeah, but it's important. It's important that you're looking at your logs. If you want to understand if you're being attacked, and I guarantee you are, it's a question of looking at the logs. And MXDR service will take those logs, and you'll be able to extract the right data. If you don't have an MXDR service, come and talk to us. We'd love to sell you one. Or take the time to review the logs and see what kind of attacks you have been subject to.
Okay, very good. So any final parting thoughts, Leigh-Anne, before we begin to wind down on this session?
Yeah, no, I think it's just really important, like, understand the technology that you have, kind of just reiterate what I said before, really understand what you have, how can you utilize that to the best of its value, and definitely lean on a trusted independent advisor like CWSI.
Ben, thanks, Leigh-Anne.
Yeah, and look, I think Microsoft dedicated a huge section of the report to partnerships. So it's partnerships across the board on, you know, your technology stack, your, you know, managed service providers, all that kind of stuff. It is very important. It's going to be a collaborative approach. There's a lot of online resources. There's a lot of people within your company with CWSI, Microsoft that you can speak to for support on this. Given the amount of threats out there, different types of threats, I think it is actually something that is really key to being secure.
Brilliant, thanks, Ben. And look, I think it's probably important to say that while there's lots in the report, one big stat in the report, you know, shows that there's a few quick wins that can be done easily to kind of mitigate. So Des has spoken about identity, he's spoken about data. You know, it's really enabling your MFA, applying your zero trust principle, looking at using some kind of detection and response, anti-malware, keeping up to date, protecting your data, and of course, it all starts with your cloud security configuration. I read a stat recently about how many attacks actually happen because of one small vulnerability that could be sitting within your Azure tenant. So following from today, CWSI have developed a remote working assessment tool. We've tried to develop it to make it as easy as possible for everybody. If you want to scan the QR code, what basically happens is you'll be taken through some questions, and we will come back to you then with kind of an executive summary in terms of where we see your gaps are. If nothing else, it can help, you know, begin to build that business case or begin to build the roadmap for some of the things that you mightn't see as that quick of a win. So I would encourage everybody to take the time to do that. We'd only be delighted to come in and help you guys because I think, you know, we can take the complexity out of this and you know, make NIST something that we're looking forward to, as opposed to a big piece of work that we have to get ready for next year. So that's a wrap up, really. Thanks to everybody, and you know, don't be strangers if we can help you. Thanks, Des. Thank you, Leigh-Anne. Thank you,
Thanks,
Ben.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, everyone.